Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to get into the meeting here, and we'll be starting very shortly.
Hey, Brian, I see that you have a raised hand. I've unmuted your mic. All right, never mind.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the kickoff workshop for statewide expansion of the Clean Cars for All program. My name is Anthony Poggi, and I am the lead staff for Clean Cars for All. I'm joined today by my manager, Aaron Hilliard, and colleagues, Kwa Yoon and Tiffany Nguyen. Before we get started, I want to go over some logistics for today's discussion. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and we anticipate a copy of that recording will be made available on the Clean Cars for All program meetings and events workshops webpage in approximately 2 weeks. Materials for today's work group, including the agenda and slides, are available on the same webpage, and a link to these materials will be dropped into the Zoom chat. In addition, we will be using Zoom's raised hand feature and Q&A box features to facilitate comments and questions. If you would like to submit comments or questions in writing, please use the Zoom Q&A feature, and we will address policy-related questions verbally for the benefit of all attendees. If there are Zoom disruptions for any reason, including malicious intent, we will immediately end today's webinar and send out another notice to reschedule. Lastly, we are unable to allow anonymous meeting participants for security reasons. Please make sure your name is clear on the Zoom platform. During today's meeting, we will begin by covering Clean Cars for All background and achievements and the proposal for statewide expansion. We will then cover the solicitation for a statewide administrator and the program performance and goal setting report. We'll conclude by discussing our next steps and have time for discussion and Q&A. So with that, let's move on to program background. So Clean Cars for All, or CC4A, is administered through participating air districts and focuses on providing incentives to lower-income California drivers to scrap their older, high-polluting car and replace it with a zero or near-zero emission vehicle. Options include the purchase of a new or used hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or zero-emission replacement vehicle. Furthermore, participants can choose an alternative mobility option, such as an electric bike, a voucher for public transit, or a combination of clean transportation options allowed under the program in lieu of purchasing a replacement vehicle. Buyers of plug-in hybrid and battery electric vehicles are also eligible for home chargers, also known as Evsc Incentives, or prepaid charge cards if a home charger installation is not an option. Participants must have a household income of less than 400% of the federal poverty level, which is $106,000 for a family of 4, and live in a zip code containing a disadvantaged community census tract. In addition, the program aims to focus its benefits to low-income and disadvantaged communities and has a heavy emphasis on consumer protections, education of the new technologies, and coordination with other clean transportation programs. With this focus in mind, nearly 90% of all projects have gone to households below 225% of the federal poverty level, which is about $60,000 for a family of 4. To date, over $190 million have been allocated to the Clean Cars for All program. $75 million of this total is from the fiscal year 2021-2022 funding plan. In an effort to get district programs opened as soon as possible, $25 million of that $75 million total allocation was sent out to South Coast, San Joaquin, and Bay Area air districts last fall, prior to the passage of the fiscal year 2021-2022 funding plan. CARB recently sent out grants for the full fiscal year 2021-2022 allocations to all 5 of the participating air districts. 4 of the district programs are currently open, and San Diego Air Pollution Control District is working on getting their program up and running as soon as possible. The program has funded more than 12,000 replacement projects across 4 participating air districts, which include South Coast AQMD, San Joaquin Valley APCD, Bay Area AQMD, and Sacramento Metropolitan AQMD. Including projects funded solely by EFMP base funds, the total number of projects is over 13,000. In addition to vehicle replacements, Clean Cars for All has also funded over 150 Evsc installations. The fiscal year 2021-2022 funding plan outlined changes for Clean Cars for All, including statewide expansion and enhanced flexibilities related to vehicle technology types, income requirements, and incentive amounts. CARB also releases the annual Assembly Bill or AB 630 report, which evaluates program performance, sets annual and long-term goals, and outlines a direction for Clean Cars for All. Starting with fiscal year 2022-2023, this report is developed as part of the funding plan process and will be released as an appendix to the funding plan. Beginning in August of last year, CARB staff began holding meetings on the statewide expansion for Clean Cars for All. The most recent workgroup meeting was in January of this year and covered the guideline changes necessary to enable statewide expansion and other changes approved in the funding plan. The 2021-2022 funding plan was approved by the board in November of 2021. The plan outlined changes for Clean Cars for All, including statewide expansion and enhancements to program flexibility. The funding plan authorized CARB's executive officer to make changes to the Clean Cars for All program prior to the following year's funding plan. Executive authority to enact these changes permits full implementation of the updated policies following the conclusion of the public process and filing of the updated guidelines with the Office of Administrative Law. The guideline changes are expected to be filed by June of this year. The $250 million for statewide expansion includes $125 million from the fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget and $125 million carried over from the fiscal year 2020-2021 ZEV package. The fiscal year 2022-2023 budget includes a separate allocation for light-duty vehicle incentives, including the existing district Clean Cars for All programs. Expanding the Clean Cars for All program statewide will provide equitable access to clean transportation to eligible residents in all areas of California and contribute to the state's public health, air quality, and climate change goals. With the expanded access in mind, the statewide program will maintain the community-focused outreach, education, and consumer protections that have been pillars of the existing program while building upon and refining these strategies to consider the needs of the communities new to the program. Stakeholders have advocated for statewide expansion of Clean Cars for All for some time so that all qualifying residents in the state can have access to this program. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate that the statewide expansion will not affect existing district programs or the upcoming program in San Diego. The statewide program is intended to coordinate with and be complementary to the existing programs in the 5 largest air districts. The statewide program will provide access for residents in every zip code not currently eligible for Clean Cars for All, regardless of whether or not those zip codes contain a disadvantaged community. Staff's proposal for eligibility is for households under the 300% federal poverty level, also known as FPL. For reference, income limits for the 300% federal poverty level for households of 3 and 4 individuals are shown on this slide. The maximum income from a family of 3 would be $65,880 for a family of 4, and for a family of 4, it is $79,500. It should be noted that while the current Clean Cars for All programs allow applicants with incomes up to 400% of the federal poverty level to participate, historically, nearly 90% of our program's participants are under the 300% federal poverty level. In addition to income requirements, a key pillar of the statewide program will be maintaining a focus on the communities with the greatest need. Focusing on those with the greatest need will require an approach that considers how to best serve and prioritize communities and applicants in disadvantaged communities with the low and those with the lowest incomes. Part of this strategy will be to identify and work with community-based organizations and Access Clean California to help ensure communities in the greatest need are educated about and have access to Clean Cars for All. Improved survey and data collection in existing programs will provide valuable data, including participant needs and how the program can be improved. We encourage feedback from our stakeholders regarding other potential factors that should determine need or priority, methods for identifying communities with the greatest need, and strategies for achieving an equitable approach in program outreach, implementation, and participation. I'm now going to pass the presentation to my colleague, Tiffany Nguyen, who is going to talk about the solicitation for a statewide administrator. Tiffany?
Thank you, Anthony. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Nguyen, and I am a staff member in the Clean Cars for All program. In anticipation for statewide expansion, CARB is seeking feedback from stakeholders about a proposed competitive joint solicitation between Clean Cars for All and the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program to provide a streamlined process for applicants who seek financing assistance in replacing their vehicle. This joint solicitation aims to maximize partnerships for targeted outreach and support for communities with the greatest need, as well as provide an opportunity for other CARB incentive programs to come into alignment to streamline services. This joint solicitation will be open to entities who have experience in administering equity-focused incentive programs. During today's work group, we will only be focused on the Clean Cars for All portion of the solicitation. The current proposed $250 million that was mentioned in the fiscal year 2022-2023 draft budget bill ZEV package is specifically allocated for statewide expansion of Clean Cars for All, and that the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program will have a separate allocation for this solicitation. This amount includes $125 million carried over from fiscal year 2021 and 2022 ZEV package. The link for further information regarding the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program can be found in the chat box. Please be aware that details for this solicitation are constantly developing, so items may be subject to change and that there will be other work groups as the solicitation continues to evolve. The current target date to release the solicitation will be early June 2022. It will remain open for 30 days and close early July 2022. After the 30 days, the applicant selection period will begin. Applicant summaries that demonstrate an applicant's ability to implement and administer the program will be published 10 days before announcing a selected administrator. These applicant summaries will be published on both the Clean Cars for All and Air Quality Improvement Program, or AQIP web pages. The link to the Air Quality Improvement Program can be found in the chat box. CARB recognizes that there may be questions regarding the solicitation and its contents, So there will be 2 teleconferences hosted via Zoom. The teleconferences will compose of a preliminary one that will take place mid-June 2022 and a final one late June 2022. During the teleconferences, questions relating to the solicitation will be answered. Programmatic and policy questions will not be answered during that time. All answers will be documented and will be published on both the Clean Cars for All and Air Quality Improvement Program web pages. To ensure a fair playing field for all applicants, I would like to emphasize and encourage all interested parties to email solicitation-related questions prior to both applicant Zoom teleconferences. Staff will not respond to questions regarding the solicitation via email, but will instead collect all questions submitted and address them during the teleconferences. Staff will not respond to new questions after the final teleconference has taken place. Please know that all answers provided during the teleconferences are draft and that the answers provided will be reviewed and posted to the Clean Cars for All and Air Quality Improvement Program web pages within 1 week after each teleconference. After the close of the solicitation period, the selection period will begin. This selection period will be about 3 to 5 weeks in which CARB will choose the winning applicant. The winning applicant will be announced on the Clean Cars for All and Air Quality Improvement Program web pages. Again, please be aware that the details for this joint solicitation are evolving and that items that I had discussed may be subject to change based on feedback from stakeholders. Additional work groups will be scheduled to address comments and feedback. Links to both the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program and for the Air Quality Improvement Program is in the chat box. With that, this concludes the solicitation portion of this work group, and I will go ahead and pass it off to my colleague, Kwa Young, who will speak more regarding about the evaluation and goal setting report.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hello, everyone. My name is Kwa Young, and I'm a staff member on the Clean Cars for All program. The annual Clean Cars for All evaluation and goal setting report, also known as the AB 630 report, requires CARB to analyze program performance and set new, quantifiable goals for the upcoming fiscal year. In addition, CARB also utilizes the report to showcase program achievements, identify areas for improvement, and illustrate the long-term outlook and direction of the Clean Cars for All program, including its expansion statewide. Beginning with fiscal year 2022 to 2023, the report is developed as part of the funding plan process. This allows additional opportunities for stakeholders to provide input, both in developing the report itself, as well as guiding the direction of the Clean Cars for All program. With this more holistic review of the program, the information in the report is also used to inform other long-term plans, like the 3-year plan for ZEV purchase incentives. To ensure Clean Cars for All fully benefits its participants, special considerations are taken in evaluating and incorporating participant feedback and survey results as part of the report. This direct feedback helps gauge the effectiveness of Clean Cars for All at providing direct and indirect benefits that are a result of more reliable and efficient transportation, such as access to increased economic opportunities. The participant surveys collected through the program also help identify areas for improvements from the perspective of the participants. In that effort, CARB continues to welcome any input from stakeholders and community organizations, such as suggestions for additional metrics to track, overall program goals, or other details that will help guide the program and utilize its allocated funds to serve those that need assistance the most. CARB also works closely with the participating districts to develop this report. This enables CARB to take advantage of the program operation experience and implementation knowledge of the air districts. This invaluable on-the-ground input is essential in examining past experiences and incorporating lessons learned as the program moves forward into new endeavors such as statewide expansion. This coordination enables CARB to analyze additional metrics such as completed projects, application volume and processing capacity, Department of Motor Vehicle data, and other information that districts and stakeholders believe would help inform the program goals and direction. Over the following weeks, CARB will meet with the districts to review any feedback provided from this work group, along with the previously mentioned data, and begin developing the fiscal year 2022-23 report. Following these meetings, another work group will be scheduled to provide update on the report development progress and solicit additional stakeholder contributions. The final report will then be released as part of the funding plan appendix. This thorough data analysis and public process ensures the report accurately illustrates the Clean Cars for All program, its achievements, areas for growth, and its path forward to best serve the community. Now, I would like to pass the presentation back to Anthony Poggi for our next steps.
Thank you, Kwa. So now let's take a look at our next steps following this work group meeting. Future public meetings, as Kwa mentioned, will be scheduled to provide updates on the solicitation, statewide program, and the evaluation and goal setting report. The regulation, which serves as the Clean Cars for All program guidelines, should be finalized and filed with the California Secretary of State by June of this year. The opening for the solicitation for the statewide administrator is planned for early June. And lastly, CARB will be meeting with the districts to discuss the data and metrics for the annual report, as well as any items for consideration that were brought up from this and other work groups. So with that, I will open it for questions and comments from our attendees. Again, please use the raise hand function if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. If you are calling by phone, please press #2 to raise your hand. You may also submit your question or comment into the Q&A box. Please be sure to state your name and affiliation before asking a question or making a comment. So we'll give everyone a chance here to either raise their hands or start typing in the Q&A box.
Anthony, it looks like we have a raised hand already.
All right.
All right, Enid Jaffe. Enid, I have unmuted your mic.
Thank you. I'm Enid Jaffe from Green Paradigm Consulting. We work on the South Coast Replace Your Ride program. If we have some comments on how the regulations can be used to improve the program or changes we would suggest based on our experience, what's the best way to submit those?
Well, the changes related to the regulation specifically, or just to the program in general?
Probably to the program in general. I don't know if some of that requires changes in the regulation or not.
Well, I'll tell you what, my contact information is on the slide being displayed now, along with my manager's contact information. You can email us anytime to talk about suggestions for improving the program. And we're happy to let you know which of those changes would require further regulatory changes, as we are towards the end here of our regulatory process with the current guideline update. But we're happy to provide you with some feedback on which of your changes would require regulatory updates.
Okay, great. And when would there be a draft of the new regulation?
So the draft of the regulatory language is available on the Clean Cars for All meeting and work group page that we pasted a link in to the chat. It was a previous public meeting in January. So on that page, You'll see a list of previous public meetings, and you'll, I believe there's a copy. There's a copy there. Yeah, thank you, Kwa.
Okay. Great. Okay, great. I did see that. I thought maybe there was something else. So perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you can't find anything, just make sure to contact us. We'll get back to you as quickly as we can.
Great.
It doesn't, oh, I spoke too soon. Next up is Chris Chavez. Chris, I've unmuted your mic.
Yes, thank you. This is Chris Chavez with Coalition for Clean Air. Thank you for this presentation. A couple of questions. So, I understand that there are very limited number of disadvantaged communities using the Callum Virus Screen Score outside of the major air districts. But I'm curious to see where the 300% of FPL, where that number came from. Like, what was the was, what was CARB's rationale behind that?
So we've categorized our historically categorized our applicants into kind of three different FPL levels, which is 225, 300, and 400. And in order to kind of, as a proposal for our needs-based approach, and make sure that while we are expanding the program to the whole state, but also trying to focus the benefits on lowest income, are part of our proposal, and that's why we're here today, is to talk about our initial proposal. And we, we'll have further meetings and discuss depending on the feedback we get. But almost all of our applicants fall into the 300%, or participants, I should say, fall into the 300% federal poverty level or below. So we thought that that was a good, this is a good way to kind of make sure that these benefits are being focused to the lowest income levels.
Okay, that I appreciate knowing that. I think for us, we haven't had a chance to review and take a solid position one way or the other. I just thinking back to the legislation with SB 1275. I know that there's also, you mentioned AB 630. I think a lot of the intent is to make sure that this is going to the folks who have the highest barriers facing them when it comes to access to clean transportation. So I think perhaps consistent with that, I'm wondering whether that 300% of FPL is the appropriate level. I think we're going to have to discuss that more internally. In terms of also just thinking about, because I know the other districts, the currently operating districts, have I think it's 400%. But my only thought is, if you have kind of a broader category, broader eligibility limit for the rest of the state, that those 5 other areas, 5 currently existing programs, could end up being squeezed because there's a greater need at the statewide level. So how's CARB anticipating to avoid sort of inter-program competition between statewide expansion and the districts?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. So the programs are intended to be complementary, and this statewide program is intended to serve those who are not eligible currently for the district programs. So any zip code where Clean Cars for All that is not currently eligible for Clean Cars for All would have access to the statewide program. And so I'm not sure I understand about the district programs getting squeezed per se, but there will be, as part of the statewide administrator requirements, there will be requirements for coordination, so those programs do work hand in hand, and they are not, in competition or in confliction with each other.
Yeah, and if I could jump on there, Anthony, to get to your point about the 300%, Chris, not only are we looking at lowering that to 300% as one of our pieces of needs-based approach. I think what we're really trying to emphasize in looking at the statewide expansion is looking at potentially other metrics for determining who is in the greatest need, other than just income. And I think that's part of our initial thinking with the proposal, is that it's not, we're looking at expanding the eligibility based on the disadvantaged community, the census tract map, with the fact that there's not as many census tracts in other areas of the state, but we're also looking at developing other metrics to help focus those funds on participants that need it the most. And I think that's one of the things that I want to highlight that as part of the proposal, is we're looking at, continuing things like targeted outreach, but also taking a look at just how things are implemented. We've heard comments about first come, first serve programs not working. But I think what we're really saying here is we want to get feedback and input on how do we shift that model to something that's more needs-based. And perhaps, that 300% that's not the only metric that we would be using to determine who's in most need. So I really want to emphasize that isn't the only, equity strategy or needs-based approach that we're talking about. I think we're really proposing for the statewide expansion to focus those funds on those that need it the most.
Okay, well, thank you for that response, Aaron. I think for just going forward, considering I know that there's been a lot of, again, thought about whether, the disadvantaged community census tracts outside of those 5 area districts. And, certainly there are those districts out there, Imperial County, Ventura County has some, and, I think Yuba County has some as well. So making sure that those counties aren't being overlooked in that process and being lumped in and kind of outcompeted by non-disadvantaged communities that have lower income folks. And it's pretty much every county in California, but just want to make sure that those folks have a chance to participate. Well, I guess the last comment, and then now I can go ahead and mute myself, is about the outreach and just making sure that I hear what you're saying in terms of having CBO or community-based engagement. I think that has already proven to be difficult at the district level. When you scale it up to at the CARB level, statewide level, I think that's going to become even more difficult. So certainly we would love and want to support fully, community-based engagement, community-based outreach. But I think there are a lot of thought and a lot of effort in how those community partnerships are going to form, what they're going to look like is going to be needed.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Chris. And we recognize the magnitude of the statewide expansion, but we also recognize the need for that to continue with those lessons learned in that community-based outreach. And we're certainly committed to finding ways to do that. And with that comes feedback from those communities. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we want to hear what is going to work and what's the best way to put it all together. But I think what we're really trying to say here is we want, and again, getting back to my earlier point about needs-based, your comment about the disadvantaged communities that are in other areas of the state, that is something we're looking at. And that's, again, goes back to us looking at that needs-based approach and what's the best way to ensure that folks that need the funding the most have access to it. So thank you for those comments, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Next up, we have Beverly Deschaux. Beverly, I have unmuted your mic.
Thank you. Hi, this is Beverly Deschaux. I'm the president of the Electric Vehicle Association of the Central Coast of California. I have a number of pieces of input for you. First of all, I think it's fantastic to consider expanding. I think it's actually not fantastic. It's essential for you to have an expansion of the Clean Cars for All to all districts, to all people, whether their district decides to participate or not. I think it is absolutely essential for us to make the transition and to do that as quickly as possible by having this expansion. And I understand your concern about how to best allocate the money so that those who need it get it. I would like to make, I have some comments on that, but before that, I'd like to make sure to make a distinction that the Clean Cars for All program does not have. And I believe when I've listened to other meetings with CARB, that they do have it in other programs or something. And that is the difference between a hybrid and a plug-in hybrid. I think that you need to call what is available for funding a plug-in hybrid only. A hybrid, in case people don't know, is simply a gas car that has a little electric motor that boosts the mileage a little bit, but both are running simultaneously. When those hybrids first came out, our engineers who work in Silicon Valley, who are part of our organization, worked with the manufacturers to say, what we need is a plug-in hybrid, which allows a vehicle to drive on only electric for a certain amount of mileage. It was 20 and it was 30. Now it's up to 40. And I remember in the conversation with CARB earlier this month or last month, saying that they were only going to fund, there was a discussion about whether they would fund the 20 miles, and the CARB people said, no, we're only going to plug, we're only going to provide incentives for the plugins, because most people aren't driving more than 40 miles a day unless they have a long distance commute. And because of that, they can be driving almost exclusively on electric. We find over the years, I've been doing this for 15 years, we find that people who buy the plug-in hybrids, they say, why did I even bother to buy a plug? Why did I even bother to buy a hybrid? But we believe and have noticed that there's a psychological factor. Most people are too afraid. They don't know enough about it. They're too afraid to make the leap. So to have that is the only reason why I would even, we mostly were saying we don't even want them to be funded, because they're still having a gas engine. But the truth is that if they are driving most of their time, and most people are driving most of their time on less than 40 miles a day, if they're doing that, then it's accomplishing a lot, but not all. But still, it's I believe it's necessary for many people to make the psychological leap. But people who have the hybrids actually have contests when they're in groups online. They say, "Ooh, I haven't been to the gas station for 6 months," or they have contests about it, and they realize that they love the gas and all of the, they love the ability to drive on electric. They love the electric. They love the savings that they get in mileage, in fuel costs. And those people, some of those people also are glad for what it's doing for the environment. So I would encourage you to alter that language. I would highly, highly recommend that. And the rest of my organization, we've been discussing this actually over the last few days, because there's a local group who has a bill that they're trying to pass, and we had that discussion with them as well. So our whole, our legislative policy team, and the leadership teams in our organizations, we have 13 chapters in California. We have over 100 across the United States. And we know about this stuff. We have engineers and they know about this stuff. And we're highly, highly recommending that you completely eliminate the term hybrid and only use the word plug-in hybrid for what you're willing to fund. What I want to acknowledge you for is that you are partnering with the CVAP program. And that's a good thing, because I myself was using some of the incentives, and it's a nightmare, each one having different timeframes and all sorts of things. So it's very difficult. And to further that, I would recommend also partnering with CVRP to have it all be one-stop shopping where people can go and get qualified, because I had to do lots of different things for the different programs. And it was very time consuming, and I'm super into this. And people who are not going to bother. It's too overwhelming for them. They simply are not going to bother. So if what you're interested in is getting people into clean vehicles, then I think that you need to make the application process a lot easier. Now, to the idea of, first of all, outreach is essential, as the previous caller mentioned from Coalition for Clean Air. Outreach is absolutely essential. I did, before the pandemic, like a year before the pandemic, we do educational events. We do large educational events. We have our owners are so enthusiastic that they come and spend their time and will bring their vehicles and talk to people. That's how electric vehicles have gotten adopted at all in this country. And I did an event and in an area that we hadn't been to yet, and people knew nothing. They didn't even want to come and talk to me. We did it at an Earth Day. We would just show up at Earth Day and bring some of our vehicles. They were very intimidated. I had to really cajole them to come and speak to us and look, because they just look and they anyway. So outreach by community groups. I was not part of that particular community. The organization who asked me to, actually they weren't either. But so we were doing an outreach for the first time, and it was very challenging. Actually, it was as challenging as it was the very first times that we were bringing our vehicles to Earth Days, just showing up with them. And people were like, what is this? No, no way, no way. So it's like starting over again. So we've established ourselves in Santa Cruz. People know us now, and you know, people know about electric vehicles now because we've done a lot of work there. And I think a lot more work is needed in communities that don't have enthusiastic environmental groups as we have here in Santa Cruz and some of the surrounding areas. Now, as far as the criteria, do you want me to take a breath and let you respond, or do you want me to go into the next piece having to do with the criteria for? So let me let you answer. Do you want to respond to me, or should I just keep going on to the next item, which is only one more thing?
Go ahead and finish your last item, and then we can respond to your points.
Okay. So, I do have a bit of concern. I appreciate that 90% of who is applying for these incentives do in fact qualify for the 300% of the federal poverty level. I do have a bit of concern for that because of that other 10%. You know, those people obviously need it for whatever their reasons are. And there could be other criteria that you use to evaluate who gets the money. And one of them, I actually heard on another conversation with CARB, somebody presented it, and I think it's a great idea. And that is, what about cars that are big fat polluters? You know, what about somebody who has a big nasty truck, you know, that's really spewing a lot of pollution, you know, when every time they put their foot on the accelerator, they're letting out a big chug of black smoke. What about that? Getting them off the road, because, you know, when I see them on the road, I'm appalled. So what if, you know, I don't know how you would figure it out, but having some sort of criteria that perhaps involves, you know, how big the car is, so how big of a polluter it is, how old the car is, so how big of a polluter it is, possibly, how much mileage is on that car, so you want to get it off the road, because chances are that if it's been on the road for a long time, things are breaking down and stuff's leaking. You know, they're leaking fluids. Their emissions are higher. So let's see, the miles on the car. How much mileage a person puts on it. So if a person, you know, drives around town that goes to the market and that's all they use it, well, perhaps they're not as qualified as somebody who's driving, you know, 1,000 miles a week to go to work and back, or even less than that. I'm exaggerating when I'm saying that. So yeah, so those types of criteria are speaking directly to what we're aiming to handle, and that is how many emissions are getting into the environment and how can we reduce them as quickly as possible, because we are in a climate emergency and need to reduce emissions as quickly as possible. So those are my comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about them.
Well, thank you very much, Beverly. And I'll start where you started with the hybrid versus plug-in hybrid issue. So this being an equity program, we do want to keep in mind that we want the participants to have options of what types of clean vehicles that they have can choose to purchase under the program. So we want to keep that in mind. We also recognize that each community has individual needs, which is why we have increased the flexibilities in the program to allow individual districts to require only plug-in hybrids or zero-emission vehicles, because those particular districts who have been proponents of it have experience using VW funds, which did restrict to those two vehicle types, and they found the program was successful. And so they would like to continue that requirement under the Clean Cars for All program. Through the funding plan last year and through regulatory updates, we are allowing that flexibility so that districts can choose to eliminate hybrids in their programs. And it may work for their districts better than other districts, because like I said, each community has kind of a different set of needs. And we do want to be responsive to that, this being an equity program. Erin, did you want to handle the next, I think she mentioned the CVRP partnership.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to add a couple things on to the plug-in hybrid, conventional hybrid issue. We also want to be cognizant of inventories in particular areas. Some areas don't have as many as much of a selection of vehicles. And again, as Anthony mentioned, we in our upcoming regulatory changes, we are providing that flexibility. So if it's appropriate and there's enough inventory, they're seeing the demand, there is the ability to push for plug-in hybrids only. I also wanted to note a couple of things, just a reminder that anyone participating in Clean Cars for All is scrapping an old vehicle. So that is one of the requirements. I mean, you did mention, I don't want to jump ahead on your other point, but pointing that out. And then also, just to point out, we also provide additional incentives for the plug-in hybrid versus the conventional hybrids. There's an extra $2,000 for the vehicle voucher, as well as the opportunity to get up to $2,000 for electric vehicle service equipment, charging equipment at home, or if that is not an option, there's an option for a charge card. And so keeping, I spoke on infrastructure. That's another one of the huge barriers in some areas for people to get into plug-in hybrids. We want to continue looking at that issue. We want to continue pushing for the cleanest replacements, but we do want to balance that with what works for people in particular areas. In terms of partnering with CVRP, that isn't something we're proposing at this time, but what I will say about the whole joint statewide solicitation is that's taking a huge step in the right direction for simplifying these programs, the application of these programs. I mean, already there, we're talking about one application can potentially get you financing, get you into Clean Cars for All, and I think that is a intermediate step that makes it that much easier to get folks information on programs like CVRP. And so, I think right now we're trying to move the needle in that direction that makes these programs more streamlined. And so just wanted to kind of note that, that is at, one of the fundamental reasons why we're looking at potentially having a joint solicitation with financing assistance, is to try to get at the issue of these programs being can be very cumbersome and difficult for community members and things to get into. And then you had another, I kind of touched on the concern about the 300% that you mentioned in terms of, could we look at other criteria? I think what we really want to do in looking at, this goes back to the needs-based approach. We are open to looking at other criteria. I don't think the income eligibility is the only thing that we want to look at when it comes to these programs. With that being said, we do want to make sure that we're appropriately focusing them on those that need it the most. And I think based on what we've seen in other areas of the state, most of the program participants to date, around 90%, have already been below that threshold. And again, as I mentioned before, we are already scrapping some of the oldest, dirtiest vehicles. I think on average, the program is somewhere between 15 to 20-year-old vehicles. It varies by region, but we are getting those dirtiest vehicles off the road already. And so I think really where we're coming from with this proposal is really focusing that funding on those that need it the most. And I think that 300% is a good first slice, looking at historical data, and then looking at the fact that we don't have any data necessarily for other areas of the state. And so that's a little bit of our thinking on how we're approaching this proposal.
May I respond?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, going back to hybrid versus plug-in hybrid. I appreciate that I don't know how much the air districts who possibly even need it the most, we're told that that there would be a lot of resistance in the Central Valley. And I may be just calling people out that wouldn't like to be called out, but that would be where they would have a lot of resistance, and they are also where they would mostly be needed. So they're still driving a gas car. They're having a little bit improved mileage. It's not enough. I'm just going to say it's not enough. And I believe that CARB should take the leadership in just pushing the needle a bit further on that, and just taking a stand and saying, it's only for, so what is the amount then that's offered for the hybrid versus the plug-in hybrid?
So if you're looking at the low, it's tiered by income, but the maximums are 7,000 versus 9,500. And then again, there's the additional incentive for the plug-in hybrid for the infrastructure or the charge card.
Oh, I see. You're saying so they both get the same amount of incentive, but the addition comes with the charging station and the card. Is that right?
No, the infrastructure incentive is on top of the additional 2,500 for the cleaner vehicle.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. Sorry. Tell me again the numbers. Tell me again the numbers.
So for a participant that makes, or a participant within below 225% of the federal poverty level, there would be either a $7,000 incentive or a $9,500 incentive. That's the difference between a conventional hybrid and plug-in hybrid. And then only applicants or only participants that get the plug-in hybrid would be eligible for the additional $2,000, either for infrastructure or charge card.
Okay. Do you find that incentivizes people enough to be willing to go for the plug-in hybrid? What do you have an idea of what percentage of hybrids versus plug-in hybrids that people are getting funded for?
The plug-in hybrid is by far our most popular vehicle type, and also at the highest income level, you're not eligible for a hybrid. So if you are 400%, between 300 and 400%, you cannot choose to get a hybrid. You have to do a plug-in or a zero emission vehicle.
Okay. So, all right, then, good. I'm glad to hear that. Still. So as far as inventory, yes, there are certain areas that don't have as much. And I know that our area is fortunate enough that we have more. The Craigslist for the Bay Area, San Francisco in particular, was there were like 900 and some just EVs on Craigslist one day. And so the thing about that is, I don't know how long this legislation will be in effect, but that number is increasing dramatically. We were watching it increase dramatically because people are dumping their early EVs and getting definitely the hybrids, dumping them and getting, upgrading all the time. So, and they're coming onto the market with very low mileage. Most of them, the hybrids are not. The hybrids are not, but the EVs are very low mileage, very low cost in the first place. So we're watching this happen because the value of the car goes down dramatically because the technology is improving so quickly that people are simply not interested in buying it, except those people who are ready to take a chance and buy it. So I would really like for you to consider what I'm saying, and I've heard other people say as well, that there is a difference between somebody who drives their car 50 miles a week and somebody who's driving their car hundreds of miles a week, and the car is older, so dirtier, so a bigger engine. Maybe you have criteria around the engine. I don't know how technical you want to get, but that that would be the need of the environment. And I recognize that you want to address the need of the individual, but that individual who's only driving 50 miles a week, they don't really have that great of a need. I would say they don't really have that great of a need. They might want a better car. They might want a newer car, and that would be nice for them to have, but they're not putting as much of a strain on the environment. And I think that that's an essential piece to consider, because that's really what, let's not lose sight of why we're bothering to even go through all of this. We're doing this so that we can transition as quickly as possible and reduce the emissions into the environment. That's what we want to do as quickly as possible. And to do that, getting the most polluting vehicles off the road first is a higher criteria than somebody who doesn't drive the car that much. They're not contributing that much to the pollution in the environment, and the poor air quality and the poor health of their neighbors and all of that. So those criteria that I listed, I think are worth considering. Also, I want to say, as far as the community that you consider, we are no longer considered for part of Cal EnviroScreen, though we have people with very low income in our county. We have Silicon Valley money coming over into our area and people living here. So it's raising what the average income is, but there is a vast discrepancy, or what's the word? Difference in incomes, in income levels. There are a lot of people whose income is very, very low here. There are a lot of people whose income is very, very high here. And so when it averages out, that's why we're not eligible for EnviroScreen. So I'm not exactly sure what you were saying about how you were determining which communities are being eligible, but I hope that all communities in the state are eligible for this program. It's it's an excellent idea. I think it's essential.
Thank you, Beverly. Yeah, thank you for your input. And again, this is what we're here for. This is a kickoff meeting, and we're here to take input as we present our initial proposal and formulate it in the months ahead, based in part by feedback we get from our stakeholders. So a couple of things, and then we're going to go ahead and give other people in line a chance to get their questions answered. The proposal does include making every community eligible for this program. So while we do want to focus on communities and individuals with the greatest need, someone who is of very low income but happens to be living in an area like Silicon Valley, if they qualified for the income base, they would be eligible for the program. They would not be ineligible just because they live in a relatively wealthy neighborhood. So I just wanted to make that clear. And another thing to consider too is that you mentioned something about all the zero emission vehicles on Craigslist. I just wanted to respond to that. For consumer protections reasons, among other things, we have dealership agreements where the districts permit their applicants and participants to shop for new vehicles. And those dealerships are trained in the program. And again, that goes back to consumer protections. We don't want someone just buying a vehicle from somebody when they have no warranty or no protections after the point of purchase. So while I appreciate you bringing up the relatively large inventory on Craigslist, it does matter, the dealership networks, if they have approved dealers have vehicles available as well. So, and again, air quality, like you mentioned, is very important. It is one aspect of this program, and we are happy to consider ways where we can get more emission reductions while still making sure that the barriers to entry for hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and zero emission vehicles, those with the greatest barriers are still have access, and in some cases still have a priority and maintain the focus of the program.
May I ask one quick question?
Well, Beverly, do you mind if you want to go ahead and raise your hand again and get back in line? I want to be able to get to
Sure.
some of the other participants.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Zach Franklin. Zach, I have unmuted your mic.
Thanks so much. Hi, this is Zach Franklin with Grid Alternatives. Just have a clarifying question. If you can say a little bit more about the sort of the joint solicitation you described as kind of an interesting idea, maybe a little bit more about how you see that playing out in general, kind of the strategy behind it, sort of the pros and cons thinking, that would be, I think, helpful. And then I think as it relates to that, I'd be curious to get your sense how you talked about potentially being able to apply to both programs at once, which is, I think is the work that we do with, with CARB on our Access Clean California is sort of looking at, that exact thing. And so I'd be curious to get your sense about how you would see kind of Access Clean California plugging into this more kind of coordinated approach that you're proposing in this joint solicitation.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Sorry, I'm multitasking here with some questions. So it really, I mean, at the core of this proposal is trying to streamline, how these programs work together, and looking at the synergy between what a financing assistance type program does and a Clean Cars for All type program does. A lot of that work is common to both of those programs. I think to speak a little bit more detail and some of the thinking. I mean, one of the hugest things we've heard about, one of the biggest challenges in implementation is doing the income eligibility verification. That's one thing where this in the past there's been various methods. Some districts do it one way, some districts do it another way, and we did that. We looked at it as a pilot approach. We're really trying to streamline some of those things, namely because it makes it easier for the consumers to understand what they need, to get into, to apply to the programs, what their eligibility is. So that is one of the core things that we think that this proposal would help simplify. Amongst other things, having one entity kind of be able to control and develop the messaging, the outreach, the strategies. There's just we see a lot of synergy between what's happening in a financing assistance type program, what happens in a Clean Cars for All scrap and replace type program. And the joint solicitation is a first step in solving a lot of the things that we're hearing from stakeholders that are making these programs challenging for people to participate in. In terms of how we see that working with like an Access Clean California, again, I think the simplification of the implementation takes a huge step at making that jump to having that more streamlined integration with something between Access Clean California. So again, I think just in general, the thinking behind this is that a lot of the implementation things we hear about, a lot of the challenges we're hearing from communities on these programs, we think that this joint solicitation takes a huge leap at trying to solve some of those programs and make it a lot easier for a single administrator to really handle some of those issues, to find solutions to some of those issues. I had something that I forgot what else I was going to say. But again, I think that's really the core behind this is looking at what the communities need and simplifying, streamlining, having that synergy. That's what that is our thinking behind it. So I think that answers your question. I did have something that I was thinking it was on the tip of my tongue, but that's really the thinking behind that proposal. In terms of what it looks like, again, we're still in the early stages of that. We want to know what's going to work. We have some things, we have some lessons learned from existing districts in terms of things that are core tenets of the program. It's going to continue to require scrap. It's going to continue to have a heavy focus on community-based targeted outreach. It's going to continue to have a focus on consumer protections, education, assistance through the program. I mean, I think that's one of the things that having that assistance to get into these and apply these programs, that's one of the things I think will be greatly simplified and improved with a joint solicitation. So some of those core things, we think that this is a step in the right direction and improving those things and making them better for our target audience.
Thank you, Aaron and Zach. Next up, we have Ladonna Williams. Ladonna, I have unmuted your mic.
Yes, good evening. Ladonna Williams with All Positives Possible. I had more of a comment than a question, and that was just the fact listening to your presentation this evening and attending some follow-up meetings. I did want to say thank you to CARB and staff for listening to those of us who have been pretty much left out of this process. And by that, I mean, others have mentioned it, that it was very confusing and jumping through all the layers and the hoops and the loops to even try and engage in the process. And it pretty much made folks just say, oh my God, why bother? And bringing it back to what this program was focused initially, I guess it was intended to serve all. However, it has not served all. And again, the main population that have fell through the cracks are the disadvantaged, very low income or low income population. They have continued, particularly those that are African American communities, have been left out of fair inclusion and opportunity to have access to this program. And I think the audits showed that with all the millions that was given, the African American communities were the least supported through this process. So when I hear others say, be sure that this program benefits all, well, pretty much all have been benefiting except for the population, again, that needs it the most. So looking at these changes that you are proposing, we absolutely appreciate that you have heard the issues that we have brought forward, and we hope that you continue. We get it that it's a work in progress, so we don't expect that it'll be perfect going through this, but the changes that we're seeing, we think will make it more inclusive and bring in community-based groups who can actually reach that population that you are attempting to include and reach in this. So I did want to say thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ladonna. And we look forward to continuing to work with yourself and other community groups to make sure that we are making sure that this program is accessible, to the folks that need it the most and the folks that have not had an opportunity to participate in the past.
Can I add one more thing? I just wanted to add also, and as we move through this process, but I think someone else had briefly touched on it. We also want to be sure we're not infringing upon others' choice, right? Their right to make their choices. Yes, we might be appalled by seeing smoking cars, trucks, or whatever. We know that's an issue. That's why we have these smog laws in place. But because we see somebody driving a big vehicle or a gas car, that might be our personal opinion, but we also don't want to end up being policed, because again, at the end of the day, we know what population is going to be targeted the most for that. So we want to keep these options available as we move through this process. It also comes down to privilege and funding and money, that folks don't have it like that to just quickly be able to transition into a electric vehicle, because it's not just the cost of the vehicle, but we're also looking at insurance. So there's other factors there. I'm sure you guys are looking into that. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ladonna, and thank you, Aaron. Next up, we have Tin Lee. Tin, I have unmuted your mic.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. My name is Tin Lee. I am a supervisor at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and also the staff lead for the Bay Area's Clean Cars for All program. I put in most of my comments about the solicitation and our concerns with it in the questions, but I wanted to just kind of go over some of it. I want to do it quickly too, just so that we have some time for everybody else to speak. But overall, I think we do support the expansion of Clean Cars for All statewide. Our concern really is, how it's going to be implemented when the program comes to the Bay Area. Adding a statewide program to regions with existing programs, it's going to cause a lot of confusion for residents. It's going to cause a lot of confusion for all of our partners, our dealerships, our dismantlers. There's a lot of reasons why that's going to happen. Having two programs working simultaneously, like in the Bay Area, people are going to get confused on what program to apply to. They're going to be confused at who the different administrators are, who their contacts are. Expanding to existing air districts is really going to be an extremely inefficient, duplicative process, and it's going to make it very difficult to align our messaging. Potentially different program requirements between statewide and the local programs are going to cause confusion. I think when it comes to outreach and targeted outreach, if one program does some marketing and outreach, it could cause effects to the other program. Like one of the things that our air district is trying to do is we are trying to find ways to do more targeted outreach for Black and Latinx communities. And if there's another program that's doing simultaneous outreach that's more general and broad, it's going to trickle down to our program, and it's going to dilute the work that we do. And then also, there are already too many programs to track already. So like you're throwing in another Clean Cars for All program in the Bay Area, and it's like, okay, if you live in this zip code, go apply for this program. And if you live in this zip code, go apply for this program. And it's going to cause a lot of confusion. And what's going to happen is it's going to create a strain on our program and the other program too, because we're going to get folks who come to us that aren't eligible. They don't live in an eligible zip code. They're not in a DAC zip code. And we're going to have to spend time talking to them about the program. And then at the end of the day, they're going to not qualify. And we wasted all this time talking to them. They submitted applications, they might not qualify. And it's going to affect both programs. And so one of the things that our air district did was, we put in a $10 million of our own local funds. And the funds allowed us to try a few different things. First of all, it allowed the air district to maintain its ability to tailor the program to region-specific needs. We were able to use our local funding to add an additional plus-up for grantees that were enrolled in low-income state and federal programs like CalFresh, things like that. So we were able to try different things to see if we could help those who needed the most help. And we also limited our funding, our local funding, so that we couldn't fund hybrids. And so we still have our local funding, and if we bring on another program that's going to allow applicants to apply in the Bay Area in non-DAC zip codes, it's going to compete with our program. And we really want to also just continue to fund projects for low-income residents outside of the DACs, because it's we're just creating a duplicative effort. And so my main point really is that we have the infrastructure built out, we have the applications built out, we have the networks that are built out. Like if we were given money or funding to expand to non-DAC zip codes in the Bay Area, we could do that in 1 or 2 weeks. It's that simple for us to expand. And that would allow the statewide program to focus in on the areas that haven't been able to participate, that need a lot of time and help to get the program up and running. It took us over a year to get the program up and running, and we're still working through a lot of challenges, including targeted outreach and working with CBOs and communities and things like that. And so if you're going to try and do this at a statewide level, it's going to be almost impossible to do it quickly and effectively without considering what you have already, leveraging the existing programs and finding ways to work within what you have. I think that's all the comments I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Tin, for your feedback and participating in the work group. And I want to thank you and all the work you've done for the Clean Cars for All program in the Bay Area, including your district's efforts to use local funds to support the in conjunction with the statewide funds. So I think we all agree that we want equitable access for everybody in the state, and including those in the Bay Area who aren't currently eligible for the state funds that come through Clean Cars for All. We recognize that CARB's been working on streamlining an approach. Right now, we know that there are multiple incentive programs that have multiple access points and run by multiple organizations. And we're part of a years-long effort to continue to improve that situation and streamline these incentive programs for communities, for applicants, so that there is a minimal amount of access points and that they can go and quickly get the information so they understand which programs they're eligible for and where to apply for each one of those. The statewide administrator, part of the requirements will be to work with existing local programs so that they are complementary to one another, and it is as streamlined as possible, and there is as little confusion as possible. This isn't a here's your jurisdiction, let us know how it goes kind of situation. This will be an ongoing partnership between this CARB, the statewide administrator, and the districts to make sure, especially in areas where there are adjacent programs, that it runs as smooth as possible. This is a kickoff meeting where we're presenting our initial proposals, but there will be additional meetings where we talk about further details and iron out more of the kind of minutia and the more specific details on the requirements of the administrator and the statewide program. And we continue to welcome that feedback.
Thank you, Anthony and Tim. Next up, we have Beverly Deschaux. Beverly, I have unmuted your mic.
Hi, thank you for taking my next questions. And I don't know if I expressed it sufficiently, but thank you so much for all of the work that you've done and for allowing us to engage with you and listening to our concerns and our input. And I hope Ladonna is on the call still, because I wanted her to understand that the targeting that I'm talking about is targeting of somebody who should get the money as quickly as possible. If they're driving a car that is a high gas consumer, that is a high smoking car, they should get priority when you're determining what criteria aside from just income to use. That's the targeting that I'm talking about. They should get preference. So there was a question that I had that I was told that it's possible in some air districts that someone could turn in their vehicle and get a gas car, which is also a plain old hybrid, get a gas car as long as the mileage is better mileage than the car that they're turning in. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so Beverly, that is a separate but slightly related. I'll spare all the long history, but I believe you're referring to the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program. That program has a separate funding source. It comes from a $1 vehicle registration charge. It's a very small amount of money each year. And that has historically gone to the South Coast and San Joaquin air districts. That stream of funding, it's $2.8 million roughly annually, and it provides up to a $4,500 incentive. So that is a small historical piece of the puzzle. What we're focused on here is the Clean Cars for All program, which evolved from that initial program to focus more benefits in disadvantaged communities or lower income and on the cleanest technologies. So within the context of what we're talking about here today with Clean Cars for All, this program does not fund, we're not proposing, and this program does not fund those conventional vehicles. While we're on the topic of kind of how some of the historical things and some of the constructs of the program, I also wanted to point out, you have talked a lot about targeting the dirtiest vehicles. One of the other things that's written into the program regulation is a requirement that high emitting vehicles are targeted. And now it's left pretty broad, and each district, at least in the current program, does it slightly differently. But they do have to propose a requirement, and in the context of moving forward for statewide, that is one of those pieces of the puzzle as we drill down into what exactly the eligibility looks like. I think that's something that we would like to continue moving forward, is some method to, and I guess to use maybe some gentler language, to prioritize or get the dirtiest vehicles off the road quicker.
Great.
So that is actually something that's part of the program already, that's existing part of the program.
That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Could you tell me what the name of that other program was? Because I was told that it was actually part of Clean Cars for All. So I'm glad to know that it isn't, but what is the name of the other program that I don't?
It's the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program. And I understand why there's some confusion. They are separate funding sources. At the district level, they are implemented together.
Mm.
So yes, EFMP, the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program, prior to the Clean Cars for All, the name being codified in statute, this pilot that is now Clean Cars for All used to be the EFMP Plus Up pilot project. So understanding why there is some confusion there, but we are solely focused on Clean Cars for All, and looking at this expansion and in this discussion.
I'll just quickly add, if for the districts that run the programs in conjunction, Beverly, when they use both pots of funding to pay for a vehicle incentive, if it's combined with Clean Cars for All, then the EFMP, Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program funds can't go to a gasoline vehicle. If it's being combined with Clean Cars for All, it must meet the requirements of Clean Cars for All. And I'll also say that Aaron mentioned the methods for targeting high emitting vehicles. You know, that's part of what the districts put together in their implementation programs. And then that's also evaluated and approved by CARB periodically, but also at the beginning of these programs. So that is something that we do take that very seriously. Like Aaron said, it is in statute, and it is, we let the districts come up with their own methods for targeting, and then we do review them ourselves to make sure that it will have the intended effect and the effect that it was intended by statute.
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that. One other thing, the person who was on earlier, who was from it sounded like your program, when he said talked about the things being very confusing if you combined the programs. I understand what he's saying, but the problem is that it already is confusing, and we are talking with people. We're on the ground and we're talking with people, and people are giving up. They're like, I can't do this. So there's actually a man in our town who is taking it upon himself, who even helped me, who held my hand and walked me through it. I don't know if that's the kind of thing that's needed, but he's a volunteer and he did that, and that's necessary. So perhaps just for part of it. So for at least the eligibility, I'm told that eligibility can be determined within 10 minutes, that it's not a 3-month, 4-month thing. It took me like 4 months to get the money from one of the programs, and that was a burden. And so to add in the eligibility for financing as well, all in the same pot, I realized that yes, there are different, they're going to be different criteria for different programs, but to perhaps at least handle part of the things that could just streamline it quickly. Okay, your eligibility and like that for both the grants and for financing, I think would be an improvement. I also understand you're wanting to protect people. Back to the thing about the Craigslist, I forgot about that yes, indeed, you have to go to a dealer. And I really understand and appreciate your protecting the consumers, because there are a lot of sleazy things that go on out there. And what I want to say is that there are websites that have that are only dealers. One of them is called cargurus.com. They are all dealers from across the state, and you can get the vehicles even if they aren't in your area. You can get them shipped to you, and I've had that done twice already, having cars shipped to me, actually sight unseen, because I wanted an EV. So anyway, thank you for all of that. Let me see. Yeah, I think I got all the points now. Got it. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate your work.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thanks, Beverly. If anything else comes to mind, you're always free to email us. Again, our emails are displayed on this slide. So
I've got the. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Next up, we have Ladonna Williams. Ladonna, I have unmuted your mic.
Yes, I just wanted to say, yes, Beverly, I am still on. Appreciate you clarifying your position. But I wanted to address the Air District. I think they had spoken on here and mentioned all of their concerns about the process being very confusing and how, I guess it basically would be doing what they should be doing or they did do. However, we have worked with our local district on these issues, and we want to be transparent here. The process failed us. That's why we brought the issues forward. And when I'm saying we, I'm talking about these communities that this process have been just impossible for them to be able to engage. Number one is the language barrier. And I'm not talking about English versus other languages. I'm talking about agency to community language. So that also, is a issue that we're identifying. When I also put in the chat, when I mentioned acronyms, it's helpful to identify what you mean by that. And what I was saying is, please, spell out what you're saying or explain what you're saying as opposed to using acronyms, because we have invited new community people to the process that haven't been part of this. So they are engaging and trying to understand it, but not to, it's not personal. This is about bringing and getting the benefits to the communities that need it the most. And we can't say it enough, just like we can't emphasize outreach enough. But the process has been in place for a couple of years. It has failed. When we asked for the numbers of who were getting the benefits, Black folks remained at the bottom of the list through all this outreach on the local level with the Air District that we had to engage with. We engaged with them. We pointed out where they were failing. We were not getting the notices. We were not getting the benefits. And then after we brought these issues to the forefront with CARB, we finally started seeing a notice. Ironically, about a month or so ago, it started reaching our communities. If we're going to do better, we have to acknowledge where we didn't do better. We have to acknowledge lessons learned. And so while I share the concerns that the Air District may have, and I work with them on other areas, but this program did not reach us. It still hasn't reached us. And so whatever had been done in the past, we need to start again or broaden it out so that the population of folks who have not been included, have not gotten these benefits, are now a priority. So in order to balance the imbalance or injustice that has occurred, you take those communities and folks that did not get those benefits, you prioritize them, you bring them up to the point of where they are getting some of these benefits, and then we move forward. But to just raise all of those concerns that the district just raised on, it being basically raising more issues and causing more burdens. No, the problem is that it did not do what it was intended to do. And so I'm sure that message got across clear to you all, but we are in this meeting for us to learn and share with each other what our experiences are, good and bad. And so at the end of the day, if we keep getting, and I'm saying we, the disadvantaged communities, the Black communities, keep getting the shortest end of the stick, then we must keep speaking this loud and clear of what haven't worked, but we're still at the table willing to work with you all to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ladonna.
Thank you. So we don't have any more raised hands, but we do have a few questions in the Q&A box. And it looks like, I'm just gonna start from the top. Enid Jaffe writes, right now, the percentage of incentives going to battery EVs or fuel cell vehicles is fairly low. Is CARB considering ways to incentivize 100% zero emission vehicles by differentiating them from plug-in hybrids?
I'll take that one. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. The program currently, and we don't intend on changing this, it currently provides additional incentive for the cleanest vehicles. I mentioned the $2,500 extra between a conventional hybrid and a plug-in hybrid, and then also the additional incentive for the electric vehicle service, the home charger, the charging cards. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do is we do want to, balance promoting the cleanest technologies with the equity aspects and providing consumers with something, members of the community with vehicles that work for them and work for their daily lives. And so that's a little bit of the thinking behind that. But we do, with that being said, we are trying to find ways to incentivize the cleanest technologies, moving forward as they become more prevalent. And we'll absolutely look at when it's time to move that needle to phase things out. We also look at, conventional hybrids are only available for the lowest income consumers in the program, those 225% or of lower than the federal poverty level. So we've done a few things within the context of the guidelines to promote the cleanest vehicles and the cleanest technology, one being providing additional incentive toward those technologies.
I'll also add that, Enid, if I don't know if you've been attending the long-term strategy for light duty incentives meetings that have been going on. We've had 2 already. We will have more public meetings. That's kind of a CARB-wide presentation on the strategy for introducing more EVs into the market, getting more of them on the road. So, and if you have any questions about that, or you're not able to find where to sign up for those meetings, please go ahead. Again, our contact info is here. So please go ahead and contact us if you have any questions about that.
Thank you, Anthony. Next up, we have a question from an anonymous attendee. Can someone receive both the Bay Area's Clean Cars for All and the statewide?
So, Anthony,
The intention of the statewide program is to provide access to people who do not currently live in a zip code that is eligible for Clean Cars for All. So if someone was able to get the Bay Area's Clean Cars for All incentive now, then the intention would be no, they could not also sign up for the statewide Clean Cars for All program. And or vice versa. And we know that this will take some tracking on our part to make sure people aren't double dipping on incentives or anything like that. But that's something we are cognizant of. But the intention would be you're eligible for one or a district program or the statewide program. Aaron, go ahead.
You covered it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Anthony and Aaron. Our last question is from Karen Eggerman. It has been suggested that the CC4A program funds CBOs to hire a person who is the program expert, especially since CC4A has 2 people who handle the Bay Area. This could provide more resources if trained properly on the ground to work with applicants.
So we're aware that this is a very administrative intensive program because of the individual case management that the program requires, going back to those consumer protections and education aspects of this program. And so the districts that currently run the program and as the statewide administrator, I imagine as well, will be given admin funds to not only have their own internal, but to partner with CBOs so that they can have as many case managers as possible to handle the caseload, and not just for evaluating applications, but for being with the applicant through the process and making sure from beginning to end that they have someone there who's explaining what's going on, making sure that they are educated about their options as far as vehicles, they're getting fair pricing, loans available to them, are they getting a competitive loan price, making sure that they have, in that case, competing, or I should say, multiple options to judge which is the best for them. And so kind of carrying that all the way until they are done with the vehicle purchase, and then afterwards following up with them to make sure that they are happy with their vehicle, and if they have any feedback about the program after the vehicle's been purchased. So Aaron, did you want to add anything to that as far as this question?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Thanks, you two. It doesn't look like there are any more raised hands, nor are there any open questions. Hold on. Beverly Deschaux, I have unmuted your mic.
Thank you for indulging me. I actually wanted to speak to Ladonna about the fact that people in the community don't know how to utilize that information hasn't come down. It didn't come down to us either. It didn't. Fortunately, there were some people who took it upon themselves to learn all the ins and outs, to follow which programs are available now and how to do that and everything. And as I said, I had someone, I haven't been involved with this for 15 years and I still didn't know how to do it. So that there's that feedback that yes, that level of support hasn't come down to the community. But what we did is that there were some people who took it upon themselves to figure it all out and be there as ambassadors to help us hold our hands through the process. And so I would recommend that, since whether it comes down, whether CARB comes down with an additional level of support in the community or not, but in the community-based organizations, that's where it came from. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ladonna Williams. Ladonna, I have unmuted your mic.
Yes, thank you. I guess this is part of what happens when we do electronic. We've been forced to do electronic interaction and participation as opposed to in person, and not being able to see each other as well. I'm sure Miss Beverly's comments are not meant to be sound elitist, but it does come across that way, to say that folks, basically took the initiative to learn about it. We've done the same thing. That's why you hear my voice here now. We've been in other spaces, just so that you know. We're dealing with heavy pollution sources, folks dying all around us, elected officials, and I'm sure you can say the same thing in your areas, but we're dealing with real life impacts hitting us daily, on top of not having access to information or resources that many of you all have. The reality is, the facts show and the audits show that folks that were outside of the areas that were designated for communities and individuals like us came in and took those resources that were targeted to us. So to say that folks who took initiative to learn what was going on, as if folks in our communities didn't do that, that's why this type of program is needed. Let's just say that. And so as we reached out in other areas, engaging in these processes with these very same agencies who knew some of these programs were available, they still didn't reach out to us either. And so once we did discover that these programs and benefits were available, that we could try and get our hands on, again, the process was just too confusing and jumping through loops. And I forgot what you said your title was, but you are in the industry. Many of us don't have that. Many of the folks that we deal with have the Burger King jobs or having to work 2 or 3 jobs. So again, this is an equities program for folks who have the privilege of having access to resources. To come and tell us what others have done, I think is disingenuous. And, you know, folks may need a lesson in how to engage in these processes and understand the other person's plight, or maybe not understand it, but not push your agenda or your beliefs on others.
Thank you for your comment, Ladonna. And I just want to reiterate that we have heard you. We appreciate your comments, and we don't take that lightly. I hope that the proposal that we brought forward today shows that we are taking your comments and others' comments and very seriously, and that we want to make sure these programs are available to those who need it the most, those who haven't had an opportunity to participate in the past. So thank you very much.
And that has come through, and I appreciate that. That's why I mentioned early in the process, what I'm hearing from you all tells us that you have listened. You know, we understand it's not only about us. It does include all, but the problem is all have not benefited. And so listening to your new approaches, we definitely appreciate it. And we appreciate that you are including our concerns and the issues, the real life issues and real time issues that our disadvantaged and underprivileged communities are facing. So thank you.
Yep. And I'll just add one more thing, you know, to the extent that we're getting something wrong, this is the whole point of this process. We want to hear that as well. So again, thanks for the comments. We look forward to working with you and other groups in the future to make sure these programs are working.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We have a question in the Q&A box from Mark Abram. From Mark, CARB did an analysis several years ago that showed many plug-in hybrid buyers frequently did not use electric mode at all. In light of the recent IPCC report and the inability to meet clean air standards, how can CARB staff move us away from providing incentives to buy vehicles with ICE engines? Oh, excuse me, internal combustion engines.
Thanks, Aria. Yeah, Mark, thank you for your question. So I will repeat again that for more information on like CARB-wide strategies for long-term strategies for zero emission vehicles, if you have any questions about where to sign up for those work group meetings, please go ahead and email myself if you're not aware of how to do so. I'll just add that, well, I don't have that study in front of me right now. As we've talked about, we do provide our applicants who are participants, I should say, who purchase a plug-in hybrid vehicle with a up to $2,000 for a home charging EVSC, as we call them, or a up to a $2,000 prepaid charge card, and that is not only to incentivize them to buy a plug-in hybrid, but to make sure that they are making full use of its battery capabilities. So. You know, we do think that with those kind of incentives available to folks, for example, to buy a in-home charger, you could buy a pretty darn good charger that could charge your vehicle plug-in hybrid pretty quickly. So if you have any other responses to that, Mark, you can go ahead and follow up with me offline.
Thank you, Anthony. We have one more raised hand. Beverly Deschaux, I've unmuted your mic.
Thank you very much. I wanted to speak to Ladonna. Ladonna, I'm not at all saying that you haven't learned and that I'm in the industry. I'm not. I'm a volunteer and I am of the lowest income bracket there is. I'm not. And how I learned was by winging it. I got left with this job with a promise that that person would support me in knowing things, which I didn't know any of, and he didn't. He just bailed on me. So what the distinction was that I was saying is that we have other people in the community. I'm not saying you didn't learn. I get that you learn, and that is why you're here. And we're on the same team, really. I wanted to clear that up with you because I don't want you to be left with any bad feelings of that I'm elitist, because I'm a very low income person, have always been a very low income person. And I just happen to have, the only elite thing that I have now is that I have some time because I'm retired, but I'm still very low income. And what I was saying is that there were a couple people who actually held our hands. And I'm saying that may be what you have to do because you may not get the response from CARB. We're all asking for more support and we'd all like that. But if it doesn't come, this is the only way that I was able to take advantage of the program, is that somebody in the community took his time and held my hand through it. We were back and forth on the phone, email, like that. And there was that level of support. And so I'm saying that might be the level that's needed next, is ambassadors who actually can hold people's hands, because it's complicated. So that's what I wanted you to know. I really want you to know that I support you and partner with you. And I'm not in any way speaking down to you of that you haven't done the work. I get that you have, and that's why you're on the call. And that's why I'm on the call. I am a volunteer. I've been volunteering for 15 years. What I have learned is been through trial and error. So thank you for your understanding and partnership in the whole thing. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, Beverly and Ladonna, thank you both for your comments. And again, this is why we're here. We want to hear from folks. We wanted these programs to work for everyone. I just want to make sure that we are providing enough space for others to comment. So again, we're happy that you're both here. We appreciate your feedback on these things. But again, just to kind of wrap up where we're coming from on these programs, the consumer protections, the consumer education, the targeted outreach, needs-based approach, all of these things that we have in our proposal are intended to make sure that we are getting at folks that need these incentives the most and have not had an opportunity to participate in the past. So again, thank you both for your comments.
Thank you, Aaron. So I do want to, if there is, Ladonna, I will unmute your mic, but if either Beverly or Ladonna wants to share contact with information with one another, please put it in the Q&A box and we can get you two connected. But I'm gonna unmute Ladonna's mic. Ladonna, I've unmuted you.
And I appreciate that, because I definitely would have left here feeling like you've given Beverly more than ample enough time in the beginning. And I do get that others needed to engage and comment, but obviously others did not raise their hand. And what I wanted to say to Beverly was, listen to this recording after we get finished. You did soften your tone a bit, but since you kept addressing your comments to me, then I need to be able to answer to you. And in fact, you did come off in a way that really was kind of disrespectful, saying what we needed to do. At no time initially did I direct my questions directly to you. I was directing my issues or comments about the issues per se. But the fact is you did mention being retired, whether you are a volunteer or not. And according to your voice, you definitely have a privilege that many folks don't have, if not just retirement. The folks that we're serving can barely work a job. And if they do, it's 2 jobs and still trying to raise a family. They don't have the privilege and the time to spend on these issues for 15 minutes, let alone 15 years. So we're just making the point here. And I think to the tribute of CARB again, allowing community, we're not going to always agree on things, but allowing this space here for us to have different views, difference of opinions and views, and being able to talk those out. We're all passionate about this work, but to hide it, side conversations and out of public's view, I don't think that does any of us any good. I think it's good for us to hear each other out, take some notes, listen to these recordings again so that we can do better. But definitely, y'all can't keep coming at us sideways when we're the ones that end up with the least resources or none of the resources, and folks coming at us telling us what we should and should not do. So again, CARB, thank you for the opportunity and allowing us to speak and speak freely. And because you hear us on different sides, she says we are on the same side. Okay, I'll take her for her words, but listening to what I've heard so far, it does make me question that. But I am open to discussions with anybody who is about real fairness, justice, and inclusion of all folks, but more so recognizing that it's not equal, and that folks who tend to be left out of these processes that you are now attempting to engage in these processes must be a priority, and unapologetically so. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ladonna. We've got just under 10 minutes left here. I think we're at the point where we're looking for that last round, last call for questions or comments here. I am not seeing anything. So I would just, I guess, not seeing anything. So I would just like to go ahead and thank everyone for attending today, taking the time to come and comment on our proposal. We really appreciate the feedback. We want to make sure we're hearing from everyone. We want to make sure that these programs are working. And I can't thank you all enough. We will, as Kwa mentioned earlier, we will be having additional work groups to finalize proposals, flesh out more details in the coming weeks. And we'll make sure that we're reaching out to folks and make sure they're getting the notices on these things. But again, thank you very much for attending today. And I don't know, Anthony, if you had anything else you wanted to add?
I just want to echo the Aaron's sentiment. Appreciate everyone participating today. And I just wanted to add, we did try something different here with the later work group meeting. We took some feedback from folks who wanted us to take into consideration that many community members may have jobs that don't allow them to take time off during the day to participate in this sort of meeting, and to give them a chance to participate after work in this case for some folks. So if anyone else has any feedback on the timing of the meeting or any other ideas for days and times that you feel that would make the meeting accessible to the most people, we know a single time is not going to work for everyone, but any feedback on that, again, please go ahead and contact myself, and we'll take that into account for our future public meetings as well.
Thank you for that, Anthony. Well, I think with that, I think we can go ahead and adjourn. Once again, thanks everyone for attending, and have a great evening.